Hey everyone, I'm Sean Wheelock. On May 16th, the film Cagefighter Worlds Collide will debut on FITE as a one-night only streaming purchase, available globally except for the United States and the Caribbean. Joining me now is the film's director and writer, Jesse Quinones. Jesse, thank you very much for being on with me.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're a Floridian, you're based in London. That's got to be a bit of a weather change, I would think. My wife is from London, so even now as we talk in April, I'm sure it's a lot colder there than it is in Florida.
No, so today's not too bad actually. It's looking pretty sunny, but typically, yeah, it's gray skies and kind of the smog. But yeah, I've been here for 20 years. Definitely, there was an adjustment period, culturally, but I love living here. It's a great city, creative, in a thriving MMA scene. So very exciting place to be right now.
Your new film, Cagefighter Worlds Collide, will have 3 start times available exclusively on FITE May 16th. So it's 7 p.m. or 1900. These are local times now in Melbourne, in London, where you are, Jesse, and in Toronto. And then following those 3 times, there will be a live question and answer session with key participants. Most likely, Jesse will be involved. That's immediately following his film. Now, for more information and to order, go online to FITE.tv. And, of course, you can download the FITE app. FITE, and you know this by now because you're watching us on FITE, is spelled F-I-T-E. So, Jesse, I know you're a filmmaker, but you're also a fellow grappling nut like me. I'm just a meager, very mediocre purple belt. Man, you're a black belt. That's super cool. And when I saw that, I thought, yeah, this guy's a real FITE fan. He gets it. If you're a black belt, you're not just coming into this world as an interloper.
No, for sure. I mean, I love the sport, and I've been training for 10 years. A lot of my friends are MMA fighters and grapplers, and I think for me, one of the real key the things was to make sure that the film felt authentic, that the fights really felt believable, and that when people watch this, whether they're following MMA or wrestling, that they really buy into the fights and that everything looks completely realistic.
What was your inspiration for this film? Because we've definitely seen, really starting with UFC 1, Art Davie brought in Ken Shamrock, wasn't a super well-known pro wrestler, but was a pro wrestler. And all the way through, CM Punk, Brock Lesnar, all of the guys, if you think about from Akira Maeda in Japanese pro wrestling. What was the inspiration for this story? Worlds Collide is the subtitle of your film, Cagefighter, because the worlds are MMA and professional wrestling coming together.
Absolutely. I just, I've always loved Rockies. I've always loved those classic fight films. And I just felt like I had a take on the genre that I could add something new to it. And there have been loads of stories where you've had MMA fighters go into wrestling, like Ronda Rousey or Shayna Baszler, or wrestlers coming to MMA. But, we've never seen that depicted in a movie, and I felt like there was some really compelling elements to that storyline. And, this film's about a guy that's dealing with fear and really trying to challenge his own inner demons, and he works them out in the cage. And I just thought that was a really exciting a platform to kind of tell this story. And, I'm not ashamed to say we're trying to make a big movie, an exciting movie with great fights, and something that, both MMA fans and wrestling fans will really enjoy.
So the main character you're talking about is portrayed by a real-life MMA fighter. I've already interviewed him for FITE. Spectacular guy, man. He's going to be a star. Alex Montaniani. And I know that you've rolled with him. You trained with him, and that's how you first became aware of Alex.
Absolutely, yeah. And I've known him since he was 18, back in 2009.
Crazy.
And we first met on the mats. We both used to train at the same place. We sparred many times together. And when I was putting this thing together, initially he was kind of helping me with the kind of the choreography and working out the fight and things like that. And then as it kind of progressed, we just sort of started devising the fights, and he just became my guy. He was the guy to play that part, and he's been incredible. And I do think that it does add a level of authenticity to have a real fighter playing that role. None of the fighters in this movie have any stunt doubles. They're all doing their own stunts. There's nothing that sort of no one stepped in, and they all kind of like took all the bumps and bruises, because these are tough guys, wrestlers and MMA fighters alike. They're used to it, and I think that was really important to make a movie like this.
You also have Luke Rockhold in this. You have the legend Chuck Liddell. I've interviewed him as well in promoting your film for FITE. I know Chuck plays a trainer, but getting these guys together and a lot of cameos, we can talk about this, from huge MMA stars. Is it difficult to hold these guys back? Do they want to treat this like light sparring and actually lay down hands?
I think, I mean, with Chuck and Luke, they were both playing kind of like coaches, so they didn't get to kind of get and jump in the cage as fighters. I did have a chance to roll with Luke outside of the cage.
That's
You know,
so
we had
cool.
a little, you know, I kept pestering him to kind of have a little spar, and that was an amazing experience. But what was really great about them was just they gave me so much insight into the fight game. You know, obviously I wrote the script and I love the MMA world, I love the sport, but I haven't lived and breathed it. You know, in the sense that I never stepped in the cage, and so sometimes would there be a moment where I wasn't sure of, they would they'd say, yeah, that wouldn't happen quite like that, or Luke would say, a fighter would never say that, or a coach wouldn't say that, or Chuck. And it was amazing to kind of have that. It was almost like having an encyclopedia right there on set that could kind of guide me to keep it authentic,
Because you're a fight fan, because you're a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and you were in this lifestyle, I'm sure you had to be hyper aware, just like you said, of not just things that people would or wouldn't say, but maybe a move that didn't look technically correct. Or I was laughing with Alex about this, and it's pretty famous or infamous in the film world when in Lethal Weapon, where Horion Gracie was the fight coordinator. And in the climactic moment of the scene, right, Mel Gibson throws on the world's worst triangle on Gary Busey, and it just takes you out of the moment, man.
I know. And I mean, that's the thing. Like, and I was probably almost to the point of being a little anal about it. If somebody was, say, mounting somebody and they transitioned to armbar and there was too much space, and I know, like, I'm looking at the thing, and a professional fighter would pull their arm out, I'll fix it, and it's same with the striking. We had a really good stunt coordinator, a guy called Danny Fort Beavis, who was really on top of the striking and making sure that all the punches really sold. Because I really wanted to make sure, like, if you're a fight fan, you watch this, you completely buy into it. It feels like a real fight,
So Alex was your boy, Jesse. How did you get Luke Rockhold? How did you get the Iceman, Chuck Liddell?
So getting those guys, I mean, that's down to my producers. We got Shane Putzlocker and Sarah Shack. I got to give a big shout out to them. I mean, Shane just sort of reached out to Chuck's people, and just pitched the project, and we sent them the script, and they locked him in. I mean, and these guys, have been, tenacious producers, and kind of, Shane's one of the biggest wrestling fans on the planet. And so it was great to kind of have producers that not only they genuinely love this movie. And it's credit to them, and also bringing on John Moxley, who then got Jay Riso, who then got John Moxley. So all those pieces kind of came together, and it just became this really exciting cast of wrestlers and MMA fighters.
How did this process start? Did the producers pitch you the idea and you developed the script, or was this a passion project that you had to pitch to them?
I started the script back in 2014, just on my own steam. It was a spec script I wrote, and
Nice.
spent a couple years on it, just draft multiple drafts, and then it came to the point where I wanted to start pulling pieces together, and I pitched it to Shane and Sarah. They really liked it. They kind of took it on board, and they got it to the finish line, and they raised the finance. They're both from Canada, so they brought they brought me out to Canada and Regina, Saskatchewan, amazing city, all the cast and crew out there. And, it was a scenario of them kind of just loving the project, believing in me and believing in the movie. And that's kind of how it got made.
When you were prepping to shoot this film, did you go back and look at other fight films? Did you watch Raging Bull? Did you watch
100%.
The Fighter, things like that?
100%. Yeah. I mean, I looked at films like Rocky, obviously. Warrior was a big one for me.
Kevin O'Connor's film, right?
Yeah, I mean, I even looked at other films that weren't fight films, but like Any Given Sunday by Oliver Stone was a good reference for me. So because a fight film is very complicated in terms of logistics. You're dealing with the fighters, you're dealing with judges, and the ring girls, and the person that does the horn at the end of the round, and fans, and there's a lot of little pieces that you have to bear in mind. And I think the biggest challenge was just the logistics of incorporating all those pieces so that it felt like a real fight event, and that you wouldn't look at it and think there's nothing false about that environment. So that, yeah, definitely Warrior was probably, in terms of just the kind of all those little logistical elements, that was a really great reference.
Was there any other film besides Kevin O'Connor's Warrior, which is a really underrated film, by the way? I think Nick Nolte was nominated for an Academy Award, but it's kind of already been a forgotten film, unfortunately. Really good film. Were there other films like Raging Bull, Scorsese's Raging Bull, for instance? Did you look at other films and look at the choreography? Because and I know nothing about directing, but I'm just a big film fan. I would imagine there are so many different ways that you can shoot a fight sequence.
Absolutely. I mean, all the Rocky ones are great. I mean, I think Stallone, and what he does amazing is how he kind of marries up the story and the narrative with the fights, and that the fights become a storytelling device. You know, like I think Joe Rogan always talks about this, how like, you know, fighting is like languages, and the more moves you know, the more it's like words.
Yep.
And so, you know, Rocky was definitely, you know, Rocky 1, 2, 3, and 4 were really great in particular at kind of just looking at even just the way they structured the fights, the personality they put into them. And it's not like we were trying to copy them, but, you know, it is a genre film and there are rules to the genre. And we really wanted to kind of make sure that these fights really delivered. And obviously a fight film, you know, the fights are an important part of it. Yeah, so we spent a lot. I mean, I spent about a year pre-visualizing the fights with Alex. You know, we would film them, break them down into bullet point beats, and then we would film them again, analyze them. Where is it not working? Then we would bring John Moxley into the room, and he would workshop them. He'd add his little flavor to it, and so it was a real long process. You know, and just in terms of devising these fights and making sure that they all rang true, but that they also had a dramatic arc to them. You know.
There haven't been that many MMA films, and I think that's because MMA really began with UFC 1. The poster is actually right behind me on my wall here in my office. UFC 1 was November 12th, 1993. So, man, we're not even 27 years into this. But you think of the canon of the great boxing films. Do you think there's going to be a wave now? And I'm going to say you're at the front of this wave of great MMA films. Do you think that's the trend?
I would love to see that. I just think there's so many stories that can be told in this sport, you know, and I feel like now is that, you know, I know Warrior came out, but it was at a time when the sport wasn't as popular as it is today. And, you know, when, you know, you've got the UFC being sold for $4 billion and people like Conor McGregor and Israel Adesanya, who are just like global superstars now. I think now is a time where, you know, the sport can really be captured on screen. And I would love to see, you know, other films being made. I just think there's so many angles and stories. I mean, I was really fascinated by the business of the fight game, and that's kind of one of the key story elements in this. You know, I've had friends that are agents and promoters and things like that, and I just love all those strands. There's so many strands to the narrative that I wanted to incorporate into this movie.
Jesse, last thing I want to ask you about this partnership with FITE. This is really cool. How did that come about?
FITE was, you know, basically down to the producers, Shane and Sarah. You know, they kind of began dialogue with FITE a good few months ago, and it just felt like a perfect opportunity for collaboration. You know, FITE has a great platform. You know, it's a platform we really respect. They've got really loyal fans. We just felt like it's a great way to kind of get this movie out to the fans that would really care about it. So we're really excited about this partnership. You know, MMA events, wrestling events are getting canceled all over the place, unfortunately. And, you know, fans are starved for content, and we'd love to excite them and give them something to be really passionate about, you know.
Jesse Quinones is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He is a director. He is a screenwriter. His brand new film is entitled Cagefighter, Worlds Collide. It will debut on FITE May 16th as a one-night-only streaming purchase, available globally except for the United States and the Caribbean. Now, again, there will be 3 unique start times, all 7 p.m. local. That's 1900. So in Melbourne, in London, and in Toronto. And then following the conclusion of the film, a live question and answer session with key participants. For more information and to order, go online to FITE.tv, FITE.tv. And, of course, you can download the FITE app. Jesse, great stuff, man. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time.
My pleasure, man.
My thanks to Jesse Quinones, and thanks to all of you for watching worldwide. I'm Sean Wheelock. This has been an exclusive presentation of FITE.